Given what he just was able to accomplish alongside Leader Jeffries, would you cast a vote to protect him if it becomes necessary?
Well, I don't think that we need to think about it really happening. As a matter of fact, Marjorie Taylor Greene has threatened him. He did not back down. And even now, Trump is supporting him and saying, oh, it was a very difficult thing. It's something that had to be done in so many words. And so I don't want us to think for some reason Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to win on this one. I'm going to wait and see. I don't believe it's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be a motion.
More. Understood, Congresswoman. So far, it is just a threat. That's not a privileged resolution, and we'll keep tabs on that. As we'd like to ask you about what's inside this package here. The president discussed security assistance for Israel today when he spoke to reporters, as well as the aid set aside specifically for humanitarian efforts in Gaza. Love for you to listen to what he said, and we'll have you respond.
All right.
My commitment to Israel, I want to make clear again, is ironclad. The security of Israel is critical. It will always make sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself. This bill significantly increases humanitarian assistance we're sending to the innocent people of Gaza who are suffering badly. They're suffering the consequences of this war. Israel must make sure all this aid reaches the Palestinians in Gaza without delay.
Congresswoman, we've obviously got the issue of aid in this case, but also weapons support for Israel. I know you voted against that package as a standalone item in the House. Is the president wrong to green light or ask for more weapons for Israel without conditions?
The president of the United States has worked very, very hard to try and work this very difficult situation out. He just mentioned that there is a substantial ongoing support for Israel, and we know that. Those of us who voted against the supplemental package for Israel was sending a message that we did not want to give additional weapons to continue what is going on in Gaza. Over 35,000 people now have died. And I was particularly concerned about Rafah. And the president had asked Netanyahu to not bomb Rafah. The people are jammed in there. They have nowhere to go. And so I think it was significant that those of us who care about solving this whole issue, who care about the hostages that are being held by Hamas, who care about the children who are dying, we simply want to make sure that we do everything that we can to try and bring an end to the destruction that's going on. So the president is doing the absolute best job that he can possibly do.
Well, certainly, Congresswoman, there are a number of issues that you care about, not just on this issue, but given your seat as the ranking member on the House Financial Services Committee, and there could still be more work ahead of you in that committee. There's been more activity in regard to stablecoin legislation, specifically in the Senate. Senators Lummis and Gillibrand have put forward an effort. It seems Sherrod Brown might be on board if it's attached to safer banking for marijuana companies, as well as executive clawbacks for failed banks. What conversations are you having with your counterpart, Patrick McHenry, in that regard? Is there going to be an agreement here?
Well, I want you to know that Patrick McHenry and I have been working very well together. We have been working on this for 22 months. We have put together legislation with a few more tweaks that we may have to put to it that I think is going to bring everybody together. One of the things about this bill is it's been very complicated. We have so many entities that are involved. We have the feds, we have the Treasury, we have the White House. Everybody has had something to say, and we've had to recognize all of those concerns. But in doing that, in the final analysis, it's about making sure that investors and that the people are protected and that we don't have a stablecoin bill where people who are, basically the companies don't have the assets that they say that they have. We have to ensure that they have those assets to back up stablecoins. We are talking with the Senate side. We've met with Schumer. I've talked with Sherrod Brown. We're on our way to getting a stablecoin bill in the short run.
Well, Congresswoman, in the meantime, cannabis companies in California are driving around with massive sums of cash and cannot access the banking system. The Safe Banking Act has passed the House something like 30 times. I've lost track of the number. If not now, if not attached to this provision, as Kailey mentioned, and possibly by way of the FAA extension, if not now, when?
Now is the time. And I want you to know that those of us who have worked with Mr. Schumer, we want very much to have safer banking. And I know that there may be some concerns with McConnell, but I am hopeful that we can overcome that, because you're absolutely right. We've got to have safer banking. And most of us who have been working on this support that.
Congresswoman, in your final moment with us, we know also that you'd like to mark what April is, which is the 56th anniversary of the passage of the Fair Housing Act. What work specifically do you want to see done in fair housing in the remainder of this Congress?
Well, as everyone knows, fair housing has been an issue in this country historically. We know that people have been discriminated against for so many reasons, because of the color of your skin, because you have children, because of any other reasons that landlords may come up with. And we have to protect against that. We have to have fair housing available for all of the people. This is a 56-year-old operation that we've been working on to get fair housing, to eliminate all of those discriminatory opportunities, and we will continue to work on it. I have it in one of the big bills that I'm putting forward to ensure that the law is respected and passed, and we just have to keep doing it. We're at a point in this country where we should be beyond discriminating people because of their color and because of the children and because of the way they look or any of that. We really shouldn't have to fight as hard, but we've got to make sure that people understand this is law. Fair housing is law, and we're going to do everything that we can to enforce it.